What's up YouTube, this is BystanderX79 coming to you with my latest deck profile video for August 2020, and today guys we're looking at my Mekk Knight Orcust deck. Gotta say, love the fact that Orcust hasn't disappeared at all from the game. Even with the hits to hard part, the deck continues to evolve, change, and get more support to be able to do what it does. Set up some very interesting boards, and then on the next turn, go in for the kill and take out your opponent, which is just an amazing deck. This particular version mixes in the Mekk Knight. Both of these archetypes, Orcust and Mekk Knight, are from the World Legacy lore arc, which is actually very awesome, and to be very honest, they do synergize very well. Orcust can just put up some very interesting starting boards, and then with the Mekk Knights added in, you can link climb to even greater heights, allowing you to do different plays, accessing more combo trees, and even giving the deck a little bit more consistency. So that's actually very awesome. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into this. Start off with the monsters as always. 2 copies of Mekk Knight Blue Sky. On summon, Mekk Knight Blue Sky can allow you to add 2 other Mekk Knights with other names to your hand. Very awesome. The thing about Mekk Knights is that you can only special summon them to the field when there are 2 or more cards in the same column. This deck has no problem being able to facilitate that on going first, so keep that in mind. It's just very awesome, and it adds the consistency you need. We got 3 copies of Mekk Knight Purple Nightfall. It can target itself, banish itself, and then during your next standby phase, search your deck for another Mekk Knight to add to your hand, and then it special summons itself back to your field. Very awesome, and it gets you more materials that you need to build your field. And last but not least, we got 1 copy of Indigo Eclipse. Indigo Eclipse can actually move your other Mekk Knights to other unoccupied monster zones, allowing you to free up the zones in a particular column so you can summon out more Mekk Knights. That's pretty much the ratio of the Mekk Knights. What you can do now is you see the Orcust. We're running 3 copies of Girsu, the Orcust Mekk Knight. Girsu is just an insane card. It's an in-archetype Armageddon Knight for Orcust and even World Legacy cards, and I can tell you right now, you will be putting that effect to good use whenever you summon them. Not only that, if it's the only card you summon, you're special summoning a token to your opponent's side of the field as well as your side of the field. This can allow you to set up columns so you can special summon out your Mekk Knights and further your link plays. 3 copies of Orcust Nightmare. Very self-explanatory, necessary in the deck. Get her in the graveyard, banish her from the graveyard, and you're basically full spirating another Orcust card into your graveyard. So always worth it to help thin out your deck. We're wanting 1 copy of Orcust Brass Bombard. I can tell you right now, its effect doesn't come up that often, but it is very useful. Being able to banish yourself to special summon an Orcust monster from your hand does come in handy if you can get it set up. But because it's kind of niche, we only run 1 copy. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable running this card, you could always knock this card up to a 3rd Symbol Skeleton. And speaking of Symbol Skeleton, we are running 2 copies of that. While this card's in the graveyard, banish it, and you can basically special summon another Orcust monster from your graveyard back onto the field. And to help round out the whole World Legacy part of the deck, 2 copies of World Legacy World Crown. It's basically additional summons for days. That's why we run 2. And that's why you want to be getting this card in your graveyard to help keep certain play strings involving Lib alive. Moving forward, we got 3 copies of Scrap Recycler. Recycler on summon sends a machine monster from your deck to your graveyard. It's just an insanely important part of this deck since Orcust effects do activate in your graveyard. Being able to load your graveyard is definitely necessary, and that's why we want 3 copies of it. It's the other starter card outside of Girsu. And then we got 1 more card for a little extra power, extending and possibly another way to get into a rank 8 play. Gizmek Orochi, the Serpentron Sky Slasher. Banish 8 cards from the top of your deck face down, special summon from the hand or the field. You could then basically pop cards off the field by getting rid of cards out. Actually, I really don't use this. Typically, it's going to be used as link fodder or Xyz fodder during the course of your turn, but hey, 2450 attack, nothing to sneeze at, and it can help you get wins too. And triple lineup, 2 copies of Effect Veiler. I actually like Effect Veiler over things like Ghost, Mourner, and Moonlight Chill, primarily because you can utilize both copies of Effect Veiler during a single go, and I just kind of like that flexibility that this card gives you a bit more than what Moonlight Chill does. So that's why we get 2, and then we also run triple Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, self-explanatory, can help shut down searches or lower the graveyard play, so definitely worth having in this deck. That's it for the monsters. On to the spells. I run 2 copies of Allure of Darkness. Yes, I do run Allure in this deck. I just feel like being able to see more cards in your hand during the course of your turn just benefits the deck's overall consistency, and it helps thin out the deck as well. So, always worth having in your deck. 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, because back row is a thing when you're playing against Eldritch and even Dogmatica now. Definitely got to be on the watch out for those back row. And rid of those cards is definitely necessary. 1 copy of Foolish Burial, so we have 7 total effects that can get monsters from your deck to your graveyard. Monster Reborn, self-explanatory extender. Orchestrated Babel, field spell that allows you to activate Orcust effects during your opponent's turn. Your opponent always loves that when it happens. 2 copies of Orchestrated Return, more draw power for the deck. Ditch an Orcust monster from your hand, draw 2 cards. And last but not least, we got World Legacy Secession. Easy to get out now that we have Libin Extra, as well as multiple copies of World 1. Moving on to the traps. 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Again, this is like Effect Veiler. We can utilize them multiple times during the course of one turn, and just being able to get that many negates going during your opponent's turn can really help you turn the tide, especially if you might not have opened as well as you would like. And of course, 1 copy of Orcust Crescendo to round out the main deck. Has a very awesome negate that can just basically cause your opponent so much trouble. Okay, so on to the extra deck. We got 2 copies of the Girsu, the Orcust of the Ignis Star. Very easy to bring out in this deck. Overlay it on any Orcust Link monster or any 2 level 8 monsters like the Mekk Knights or Orochi. Can get them out. Very awesome. Has multiple effects. You can target one of your banished machine monsters attached to this card as an overlay unit, and then you can detach materials from this card to basically protect your monsters from being destroyed by card effects, which is actually very awesome. So definitely always worth having in this deck. I'm running 2 copies of Galatea, the Orcust Ornamentation, in this one. To be very honest, I never had the need to summon a 3rd when playing this deck. Galatea is just huge because it allows you to return your banished machine monsters back into your deck or extra deck, and to get access to your Orcust spells and traps, which are necessary to really help this deck do what it does. And then last but not least, we got 1 copy of Lungirsu, the Orchestrator. Lungirsu really comes into play if you have Babel up. Anytime a monster is linked to it on your opponent's field, you can actually return 2 of your banished machine monsters back into your deck to basically get that card off the field. Can't tell you how awesome that is just to utilize that effect during your opponent's turn. It can just break up their combo strings, and really, because it points to 2 of your opponent's zones, it takes 2 zones away from your opponent, and that can be problematic, especially when they need particular zones open. Talked about this card a lot with this deck. We have 1 copy of Lib. Lib, you need to have a World Legacy card in the graveyard to really access its full effect, and when you do, you're able to move a World Legacy card from your deck onto your field, similar to the way Galatea can get the Orcust cards out onto the field as well. Very awesome card, and she does allow you to do a lot of different things, so that's why she's very important in this deck. 2 link ones primarily in here to basically build columns to get zones open for your Mekk Knights. Excuse me about that. But Link Rebo, typically you utilize it during your turn when you're summoning out Girsu and the tokens. This way you can build up the columns very easily. And Amorange is more or less to utilize during your turn if you open with maybe Symbol Skeleton or Brass Bombard. We got IP Masquerena. Masquerena is awesome, and any extra deck allows you to link summon during your opponent's turn, and that link monster using her as a material can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, making it even more problematic to deal with. So she's always a good card link to have in any extra. We're also running the Nightmare package, Unicorn to spin any card back to your opponent's deck, Nightmare Phoenix to take out back row, and then of course I have Borosword Dragon, OTK Machine. I feel that this is the best fit for the extra deck. I did try playing around with other Link 4s, even multiple Link 4s, but now that we have Dogmatica in the mix, it's necessary to really address that particular deck when it comes to the extra deck. I feel Borosword is the better choice here, being able to cut your opponent's attack points in half, getting multiple attacks, so you're able to actually inflict that damage and go for game. There really isn't that much varied attributes in the extra deck to utilize something like Axis Kotarker. Appaloosa could be a good card, but I just feel that card is kind of underwhelming, as it just negates monster effects but doesn't destroy the card. Automax would probably be the best second card I would probably put if I didn't want to run Boral Sword, primarily because of what it can do, and it just pairs well with IP. So, and to deal with Dogmatica, like I said, we're just running a small anti-Dogmatica package. One copy of Nista pops something off their field. One copy of Sapphire Dragon. When it hits the graveyard, you summon up Mekaba, and Mekaba basically allows you to negate a monster effect, spell, or trap card. So it gives you that extra interruption that the deck definitely needs. Guys, that is it for my Mekk Knight Orcust deck profile for August 2020. I do hope you enjoyed the deck profile. If you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this on my channel, make sure to subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss any uploads. Check out the description box below. Find the links to my affiliates, tcgplayer.com, as well as sidedeckversus.com. Great resources for any Yu-Gi-Oh player. Follow me on social media, and if you guys want to help build my community to even greater heights, the invite link to my Discord server is also in the link description box below. Join the conversation. We'd love to have you. Guys, as always, until next time, peace.